Are you just about to book a cruise with Viking, or maybe you already have, and now you're trying to figure out if you should buy their travel protection or not? If so, let's get into it. Hey there, travel lovers. It's your trusted cruise and Tauck tour and Africa safari expert, Shawn Power here. And today, that's just what I want to talk about. It's Viking's travel protection. I have a lot of clients who, get a hold of me, who maybe they book directly with Viking, or people who don't even know me get a hold of me through my videos and through my website. And what happens a lot of times is, Viking is mass marketers. I mean, we all know they're always advertising online. They send out brochures in the mail all the time. So a lot of times people end up calling Viking. And they're very good at letting people know that, hey, it's only like a $50 deposit to get booked. And they tell you that there's no space left. And that is true many times. A lot of times it's not a sales pitch. But the point is, a lot of people call Viking, and before they're off the phone, they've went ahead and they've, booked a cruise and they've paid a $50 deposit. That happens with my own clients. And like I said, it happens with people who don't know me as well and then get a hold of me afterwards. Now, by the way, that's no big deal at all. The reason why people do it is because Viking makes it very easy to move a booking to their travel agent. So when a lot of my clients do that, they just call me up after, or they email me, they give me their booking number, and I'm able to add hundreds of dollars of onboard credit to their booking to cover, the gratuities and stuff like that. So it's very simple as long as it's within 60 days of your booking. But the point is that on the phone, the Viking person said, hey, you really need to buy our travel protection. And they give them all the reasons why, but they also tell them they got 2 weeks to decide. So a lot of people at that point say, uh-oh, I got to figure this out, and they get a hold of me, and we go from there. So what I wanted to talk about today is it a good idea to use Viking's travel protection, or should you maybe use a third party like Allianz, which is the company that I work with when it comes to a third party? Now, like a lot of things, it's not a simple answer. And one thing I should say, by the way, I am not a licensed travel insurance seller. I don't work for TripMate, which is Viking's insurance company. I don't work for Allianz. So I'm just giving you my interpretation of these policies. I mean, I've been selling travel for 20 years. So, I've seen it all. I've kind of been through it all. I've read these policies again and again. But again, this is just my interpretation. Definitely feel free to call these companies directly, the insurance companies, for more details. If it sounds like, what I'm getting into is too, we'll call it legal or technical. But let me give you my interpretation and see if it helps you out. So like I said, it's not always an easy answer. A lot of times it's going to make sense to use Viking's option. A lot of times it's not. But when you're on the phone with them directly, all they're going to say is our option is the best. Reason being, they can't offer you anything else. All they can do is sell you Viking's insurance. So a travel agent like me, and again, I've booked almost $100 million of travel over the years. I've been doing this for 20 years. I have thousands of clients. I've been on 90 plus cruises myself. So again, I'm very experienced with this. What I do with my clients is I look at both options of the third party and Viking's option to help them decide what's best for them. So basically, a couple of things to keep in mind with Viking. If you want their insurance, you pretty much need to buy it up front. Now, yes, you have a 2-week leeway, but the reason is because in order to be covered for pre-existing conditions, it says that you got to buy their policy within 2 weeks of when you made your deposit. And pre-existings are so important to be covered for. They are the number one reason why travel, insurance claims get denied, at least in my experience over the years. So with Viking, you do have to buy that within 2 weeks of booking your cruise. Now that's the same with most insurance policies out there. I actually happen to have an exclusive policy with Allianz. Is because the company I'm with, we do hundreds of millions of dollars in business. So with our policy, you can wait till final payment time, buy Allianz, and still be covered for pre-existing conditions, which is very unusual. But again, with Viking, you have to buy it up front. So right away, that's a bit of a downfall with Viking, because one thing that attracts people to Viking is that I only got to put down a $50 deposit. But then all of a sudden they say, hey, if you want insurance, we need a couple of more $1,000. So that really frustrates people, and it's why they start looking at it immediately when they're about to book or afterwards, because they really have to think about it right away. If I'm booking you on another company, I don't know, Oceania or Regent or whoever, we almost don't even need to think about insurance till final payment time. But with someone like Viking, we actually do. So like I said, that's one of the downfalls with their insurance is that you do have to pretty much buy it up front to get the best protection. Now, at the same time, there's also some pros to Viking's insurance. Number one is it does not base, or the price of the insurance, the travel protection is not based on age. So let me explain what I mean by that. I wrote down some numbers here of just a real life example I went through. I think it was yesterday. So I had this couple who were booking a Europe cruise, 2 weeks. It was like $91.99 per person for their balcony room, so about $18,000 and change between them, but we'll call it $91.99 a person. And Viking's travel insurance, I'm looking at it here, it was $9.49 per person. Okay, so $9.49 per person, pretty close to 10%. Now, let me give you some real life numbers of Allianz insurance. And again, Allianz goes by age. They also go by state and stuff as well. These people happen to be in California, but it could change price if you're in New York or somewhere else. But let me give you some real numbers based on age. So if someone's 81 or older, for that 91.99 cruise to be covered with Allianz, it's going to be $2,085, way more than Viking's, $949. So I think in that case it makes sense to go with Viking. If they're 76 to 80, it looks like it's going to be $1,661. So it's $1,661 per person with Allianz. Again, that's a lot more than Viking's $949 per person. If someone's 71 to 75, $1,333 per person. So again, $1,333. And if they're 66 to 70, $1,069. So you can see basically, if you're above 65, it's going to be cheaper to go with Viking. And that's what I tell my clients a lot of times. I say, look, if you're 65 or older, a lot of times or 66 or older really, because 65 is the cutoff for a bit of a lower price, and then it gets higher at 66. But like I tell people, the rule of thumb is if you're over 65, more often than not, it's going to be cheaper with Viking. If you're 65 or under, a lot of times it's going to be cheaper to go through Allianz. So here's again some examples. So again, the cruise, $91.99 per person. So if you're 61 to 65 with Allianz, it's $922 a person. Now it's a little bit less. If you're 56 to 60, it's $836 per person. 51 to 55, $756 a person. 46 to 50, $675 a person. And we won't bother going under 46 because the majority of Vikings clients are going to be in the older age bracket. Again, the younger you are, the cheaper it's going to get. So that's obviously better for you. So like I said, up to 65, it's probably going to be cheaper with Allianz. Over 65 with Viking. But it's still not that simple, because what you got to look at is what you're doing before and after the cruise. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're going with Viking and you didn't book their airfare, which is a very smart thing to do. I'll cover that, in another video. More often than not, it doesn't make sense to use their airfare. Now and then it does, but more often than not, it doesn't. So let's say you book your own airfare and maybe your own hotels, and maybe your cruise is a Rome round trip, but you're going to, I don't know, Venice for a few days before, or like I do all the time. I do these multi-trip vacations where I'll fly to one country, do a cruise, then I'll fly to another one, and then I'll fly somewhere else. So like last month, I literally just did an Arctic cruise from Norway to Reykjavik, Iceland. Then I flew to Paris, did a round trip river cruise. Then I flew to Munich, and I did a Wilhelmshaven, Germany to Budapest river cruise. So the point is when you're all over the place like this, Viking's insurance is not going to cover you all over the place. They're just going to cover you while you're with them. So again, if it's a Rome round trip cruise, they're going to cover you for anything you book through them. So yes, if you booked a pre-hotel with them, you're covered then. On the cruise, of course, you're covered. And same with afterwards if you book something with them. But if you're not booked with them and you break a leg or you get hurt or something like that, you're not going to be covered. So this is something that you got to be careful about. Now with Allianz, from the time you leave home to the time you get back home, you're going to be covered the whole time. So like my trip, you could be up in Norway, you could be in Iceland, you could be in France, you could be in Germany, you could be in Austria. Where else was I? Hungary, and I was also in the Czech Republic. You could be all over the place, break a leg, have a heart attack, whatnot. You're still going to be covered the whole time you're away. So that's the one advantage of Allianz. But again, if you're 80 and it's like $2,085 for that compared to $949 with Viking, again, maybe it doesn't make sense to go with Allianz. Again, there's some workarounds. So what I do with a lot of my clients, especially when they're like 75, 76, 80 and beyond, instead of selling them the $2,085 per person policy to be covered the whole time, what I'll do is we'll get them to use the Viking insurance to kind of cover cancellation and everything for $949. And then we can do a policy with Allianz for like zero cancellation coverage. It just covers medical. That's like $220. So let's think about it. We do $949 with Viking to cover cancellation, another $220 with Allianz to cover medical the whole time. And now we're up to, off the top of my head, what, $1,170, again, instead of $2,085 with Allianz. So like I said, there's a lot of nuances here is the point. And the point is that when you call Viking, they can't tell you that because, again, they can only sell their own policy, whereas someone like myself, as a travel agent who, can pretty much book anything I want for my clients, I'm able to show them third-party options. And that's why a lot of people use, travel agents. Again, many people call Viking directly to get information. They book. Again, no problem. My clients just get a hold of me after, give me their booking number. I add hundreds of dollars of onboard credit to their cruise, and I do that for people who get a hold of me after as well, who don't know me, and they're just using my service for the first time. But the point is that there's a lot of nuances about this insurance. Now, a couple of more things to think about, and I know it's a lot, but that's just the way, travel insurance works. So let's say, who you're traveling with. So here's something to think about. A lot of times when I book people, they're going with 2 or 3 couples. Lots of times I'll book 6, 10 couples. I was just working with a Viking group yesterday who there's 7 of them. So if you use Viking's insurance and someone else in your group cancels and you don't want to go because they're not going, well, with Viking's insurance, it does say the only way to cancel is if they're in the same accommodation as you. So yes, a husband and wife is fine. Let's say the husband gets sick, he can't travel. Well, of course, the wife can cancel as well, and you can get all your money back. But your best friends, they're not going to be able to necessarily cancel and get their money back because their friends didn't go. Now with Allianz, you can. With our particular policies with Allianz, and again, it's an exclusive policy because, again, we do hundreds of millions in business. So remember I said we can do pre-existing conditions up until final. Well, also we can have it where 3 or 4 couples will be covered. If, one cancels, they can all cancel. But again, it's an exclusive thing. So like I said, if you want to be able to get your money back because, your friends canceled, you're going to have trouble doing that with Viking, whereas you can with Allianz. But again, here's another nuance. With Viking's insurance, and this is definitely a plus, this is one of the main reasons why a lot of my clients buy it, is that they also have a clause that's called any reason cancellation. Now, again, that doesn't mean you can just cancel for any reason and you're going to get your money back. That's not what it means at all. A lot of people think that, but it's not really the reality. So here's what it really means. It means, look, if you cancel and you cancel for a covered reason, sickness, injury, death in the family, etc., there's a whole list of reasons why you can cancel. Whatever the penalties are, whether they're 50% or 100%, and that all depends on how late you cancel. If you cancel for a covered reason, you'll be able to put in a claim to get your money back, to actually get cash back. They'll send you a check or they'll deposit it through an e-transfer or whatnot. Now, it says if your claim is denied because it's not a covered reason, then you'll get a voucher from Viking that's good for a year. So let's say you cancel on August 1st, 2025. It just means you got to rebook a trip by August 1st, 26 and apply that credit to that new cruise. So here's the point. That's kind of a nice backup. So again, this group of 7 is a great example. Let's just say they said, like, look, unless we can all go, none of us want to go. Well, then they don't really want to get Allianz insurance because it's just too many. Allianz is not going to cover 7 rooms. Like I said, we can get like 3 or 4 rooms covered. But all of a sudden, if they don't want to go because their friends don't go, here's what would happen. Let's say one couple cancels and they say, we're not going. Well, then everyone else, the other 6 couples with Viking can say, look, we don't want to go either. They can cancel. Their claim is absolutely going to be denied because it was because a friend got sick. But then they'll actually get their any reason voucher back, which is good for a year. Now, I'm not saying, this is a great idea because, you've already went through the booking and you went through the hassles of booking your airfare, this and that and everything else, and now you got to get it back and rebook again. It's not ideal, but it's just a nice little backup that if you don't get cash back from Viking, that you will get a credit. So like I said, it's something to think about, but again, it's only good for a year, so you got to keep that in mind. And you can only use it on one trip. So keep that in mind if you book an expensive trip. I'll give you an example. I had a couple one time, they were doing a world cruise with Viking. This was like a $120,000 trip. And they decided against it. They canceled for it wasn't a legitimate reason. And basically, they wanted to go on another trip with Viking and they had no choice but to book another world cruise because they couldn't take that. This was like a $120,000 trip. They couldn't take that credit and split it up over 3 or 4 trips. They had to use it at once. So again, there's a lot of nuances here. And here's what I tell people. I've been doing this for, again, 20 years. I've had literally hundreds of people cancel. And none of my clients ever just canceled just because. They're usually going, and it's if they get sick or injured or there's a death in the family or something. So don't buy the any reason policy from Viking just because you think you're actually, because a lot of people say, oh, I'll overpay for Viking's insurance because I'm getting the any reason. But most people never use it. I've had like maybe 5 couples over the years who cancel for a non-legitimate reason. Everyone usually goes unless they get sick or injured. So don't buy it for that reason. But again, yes, if you're with a bunch of couples and you don't want to go unless everyone goes, think about their insurance. Also, I'll give you another example. Let's say you got a friend at home who's maybe really sick, maybe they're dealing with some kind of disease and you're worried that they could pass or be too sick and you don't want to leave. Well, I hate to say it, but let's say your friend dies, your neighbor, your best friend, whoever it is. I hate to say it, but insurance companies just don't cover friends. They cover, parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. They don't even cover cousins. So the point is like if you got somebody in your life who you're worried about maybe health-wise, and they're not one of those, again, mom, dad, brother, sister, niece, nephew, your own kids, that kind of thing. If they're not one of those, again, you might want to have some kind of any reason insurance with Viking because again, your claim will be denied if you don't go because a friend passes away, but at least you'll get that credit that's good for a year. But again, if you're the type of person, I'm going no matter what, unless I get sick, injured, unless I die, I'm going. And if Allianz's price is less, then Allianz could make more sense. So again, no doubt there's some confusion while you're watching this video because this is a lot of new terms to people who don't do this all day, every day like I do. But the point is, it's not a simple answer. And this is why, again, I've had strangers who say, look, I booked my Viking cruise. I happen to come across your videos. I see you work with Viking, you know about them. Can you help advise me on insurance? And like I said, they'll come work with me. I'll give them some onboard credit and stuff. We'll look at insurance and then we'll make the best decision for them. But that's why, you really want to talk with someone who can offer both options. If you talk with Viking directly, you're going to get biased information. They're just going to say our option is great, but they may not explain that they don't cover outside of their trip. They may not explain that their price could be quite a bit more. Again, like I said, especially if you're in your 40s or early 50s or 60s, you could be paying hundreds and hundreds more per person. And they're going to make it a big deal that they have the any reason clause. But again, in my experience, almost nobody uses the any reason clause unless it's kind of a one-off, like I said. So I wouldn't overpay for insurance for that. So anyway, hopefully this gave you a little bit of value here today. I hope it helped you maybe decide if you should use Viking's insurance or if you should use a third party like Allianz or someone else. I'm sure you'll have more questions. Just go to my website, ShawnPower.com, fill out my contact form, get a hold of me if you have more questions or leave a comment underneath this video. And hopefully this helped you out a little bit. And I'll be talking to you in the next video and hopefully we'll cover some more interesting topics soon. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.